Welcome to Energized Futures, the podcast that sparks discussions about the dawn of a new era in energy. I'm your host, Stephen Ballard, here to illuminate the road ahead as we venture towards a greener, more sustainable future. Over the next few months, I'm going to be speaking to Alex Boyd, the CEO of PSC Consulting. PSC works with a great number of the world's electrical transmission, generation and utility companies, and therefore Alex is in a unique position to explain just how our energy landscapes are being designed for our sustainable future. We'll explore innovations, breakthroughs and disruptions that are driving the push towards renewable energy with sources like wind, solar, hydrogen and beyond. Here at Energized Futures, we're not just about celebrating innovative solutions, but also about understanding the challenges. We'll delve into the complexities of integrating renewable energy into our existing power grids, and the regulatory hurdles, the technology gaps, the financial implications, and more. So whether you're an energy professional keen on keeping a finger on the pulse of the industry, or simply a concerned citizen wanting to know more about the world's shift towards sustainable energy, we promise to enlighten, to provoke thought, and maybe even to surprise you. Welcome to Energized Futures, where the transformation of energy is not a distant dream, but a reality we are shaping right now, one episode at a time. So plug in, power up, and let's get energized for a better future. Energy transition. That means moving from an oil-based economy to a renewable energy economy. And there's a big shake-up in the market now, isn't there? Because oil companies have now become energy companies. And of course, we've got the traditional energy generating companies. It's very mixed.
It is. The transition is already happening. We're already seeing a lot of renewables roll out. We're seeing a lot of creativity around other technologies that will help us manage supply and demand in the electricity grid. I think what you're talking about there, where oil companies are transitioning to energy companies, is a recognition by them that things are changing as well, and they are taking steps to become part of the transition. So, most of the oil majors or these newly positioned energy companies are investing in significant renewable energy portfolios, which I think is an interesting dynamic, because these are organizations that are used to investing very large sums of money and expecting some kind of return on that investment that's quite some number of years in the future. They're very comfortable with that proposition, and they're applying that perspective to the renewable energy industry as well.
So do you see this as a sort of war between the traditional utility company and these new energy companies? Who's going to win out at the end of the day? Because presumably the energy companies are much more commercially focused and therefore have that freedom to provide, dare I say, an improved service to their customers.
Yeah, I think it's likely to create tension for sure, but it only has to be a war if we're not working together. And I think the critical part of this transition is that it's so big that we all have to work together. We all have to do our part. And if you think about the oil companies transition to energy companies, and then you also think about the traditional utilities, these organizations all have different skill sets. They all have different mandates, and all of the above can be part of the story. So I think that there are things that the oil companies will be able to do very effectively. There are other things that they won't. And probably a good example of that is transmission. So transmission is very challenging. Transmission is something that we're going to need a lot more of as we move forward. And it's not something that the oil companies are particularly familiar with. So that'll be certainly an area where traditional utilities will have a big part to play going forward.
I remember when we were talking earlier, you were saying there's going to be a role for oil for some time yet in this whole transition. How reliant do you think we're going to be on oil in the future?
So that's very much a how long's a piece of string question, but I can give you some perspectives that will at least help frame that question or the answer to that question a little bit. So I know that a lot of the credible projections around how we achieve carbon net zero by 2050 have fossil fuels meeting somewhere in the vicinity of about 25% of our energy needs by the time we get to 2050. So the oil industry, the fossil fuel industry is not going away anytime soon. And I think as we think about the transition, we should not lose sight of that fact, because they're going to be an important player in the transition. The other part of the story is that DNV, one of the global consulting firms, have done an assessment which says, if we continue to accelerate at the rate we're accelerating on the transition, where will we get to by 2050? And their assessment says that we're going to be in a position where about 50% of our energy needs will be met by fossil fuels. So what that means is not only are we not going fast enough, we're also not even accelerating fast enough, which is a really big implication for what's coming.
Now, isn't it the case that we will always need fossil fuels for putting nuclear to one side? Will we not always need fossil fuels, probably in the form of gas, as base load?
We will certainly need fossil fuels for the 30 years between now and the 2050 target. The most likely choice of fossil fuel will be gas, and the reason for that is because, firstly, its carbon footprint is not as high, and secondly, it's far more flexible use. So we're not really looking for base load. What we're looking for is generation that will allow us to fill the gaps that are being created by the intermittency of renewables.
So Alex, what you're saying is there's no real overnight solution, no magical switch that we can flick to make the world a better place.
Well, there isn't. This is a big challenge, and honestly, if you talk to the people who are being real about this transition, none of them will ever say that there is an overnight solution. And I think talk around an overnight solution or talk around the fact that we have to do something right now is actually creating more harm than good. So I think we'll have a much better outcome if we're really real about how the transition is going to progress and the speed at which it will progress. And I think, frankly, the challenges that we're going to be experiencing as we go through this transition.
Do you think that applies to the political classes as well?
Ultimately, I believe that politics is driven by the will of the people. And it's the will of the people. As the will of the people changes, we're going to see the politicians having different motivations, having different drivers in their decision making.
So our future is very much in our own hands.
It is. It absolutely is.
And that's a wrap on today's episode of Energized Futures. We hope you've enjoyed this illuminating exploration into the challenges and triumphs in our ongoing energy transition. Our conversation today focused on taking a pragmatic approach to energy transition as we move from an oil-based economy to renewable energy. We hope it sparked curiosity, provoked thought, and provided some insights on the path towards a more sustainable world. A huge thank you to Alex Boyd for his invaluable perspectives, and of course to you, our listeners, for tuning in and joining us on this journey. It is your curiosity and eagerness to learn that powers this podcast and the broader conversation around renewable energy. Don't forget to subscribe whenever you listen to your podcasts so you won't miss out on future episodes. We have plenty more exciting discussions and expert insight lined up for you in the next few weeks. We would love to hear your thoughts on today's topic, so reach out to us on social media or through our website. Your questions, your ideas, your concerns, they're all part of this important dialogue. In the meantime, keep asking questions, keep seeking solutions, and most importantly, stay energized for the future. It's not just sustainable, it's not just equitable, it's prosperous for all. I'm Stephen Ballard signing off. Until next time, power on.